Okay, first live video in the studio. Trying to get things set up here. Oh, this phone died. I didn't know that. Um, Cute. Man, this is gonna take forever. You see it now? Wait, did this really happen? Okay, let's stay focused since we are streaming. Alright, right now we gotta download some more Studio One files. I mean, I want them all because I'm gonna need them. Apart from that, let's go ahead and I can either wall mount my TV or I can Let me go ahead and make this post, man. We're good if I don't. Actually, let me tweak a little bit. Oh, come on. Oh shit, it's almost done. Today is an important day for me. So, as scary as it is to do some of this, I still do it. What to do, what to do. I guess I'm supposed to go live here. I don't have my charger. There it is. There you get enough images. I actually don't even know what the objective is for today. Okay. Wait a minute. This is my page. Okay, well, I'm doing something wrong. Doing something wrong here. Close this star. We gotta go here. All right. Let's get this studio all set up here. I barely remember what to do. So let's just create a song. And what's up with this HDMI cable? Why isn't this thing working? There we go. All right, so that's working. See if you can see this. Oh, the phone can't. Okay. That's not good. new tripod, and obviously I'm still having to tighten up some parts of it, so that's better. Okay. Where was I? Let's create a new song. Let's call it 10 clout commandments rough draft. Let's just call it rough. Okay. Studio One, the sample rate does not match your audio device configuration. Okay. So we're gonna have to set up my audio box here. How do I do this again? I think I'm supposed to push a button somewhere. It's turned on. Oh, it's not plugged in. So let's find a plug for it. There it is. Hey Floor, how are you? Let me see if I can find this. Oh, here we go. I don't know if this is it, but we're gonna find out. What is this, by the way? This. Okay, bet. This is what I was hoping it would be. Now what? Okay, audio box is set up. Let's go ahead and close Studio One. And then reopen it. Let's see if it does anything that I needed to. Hmm. Okay. Here we go. Configure audio device. Let's Akerline. We're gonna go into if the device is plugged in, maybe it needs a driver. Let's look that up. There we go.
Howdy folks, this is Shane, and I just got a brand new sound card for my computer that I plan on using for the Guitar Talk Saturdays when I do my voiceovers, as well as maybe having a portable backup solution for if I'm traveling and I need to record either a couple of guitar amps or something like that. So I thought I would try one of these. This is the Steinberg.
Yeah, trying to hook this up, it is not easy.
So we're going to go ahead and open this, see what's in the box, and then we'll hook it up and see how it sounds.
But I will figure it out.
Let's do it. So one of the reasons I decided on this particular model was the fact that it worked with just about everything. I use both Nuendo, which is basically Cubase, and this is also compatible with a Mac, with GarageBand. I don't use GarageBand, but I use Final Cut Pro, so I'm assuming I can just plug this thing in and it'll work. Fingers crossed. Let's open it up. USB 2.0 cable.
Check.
instructions, which I'm not going to even bother with. We have some other documentation, which I'm not going to bother with either. And this is the actual unit, which we're all keen on checking out. So let's have a look at this. Actually, it's pretty heavy, I've got to say. It's heavier than I thought it was going to be, which is good, because it actually feels like a good quality unit. The great thing about this particular unit is it records up to 192 kilohertz. So for those who don't know what that means, essentially CDs are 44, then there's 48, which is kind of like with DVDs. It can sometimes go higher than that depending on how it's mastered and all that kind of stuff. This is actually way, way higher in terms of sound quality and what's capable of recording. So that's the theory. I don't think I'll ever use it at 192 kilohertz, but at least it's got that option. So let's take a look at this. So it likes fingerprints, I've noticed already. So looking at the front panel here, we have two inputs. These are both mic and line inputs. You can see the hole in the center, so you can just plug a jack style cable in if you choose to. It has a gain for this preamp here, a gain for this preamp here. So there you go, they were both at full blast. We have a high Z or high Z input. So if you're playing, say, a bass guitar or a guitar straight in, and when you're using software modeling, push this in and it'll give you a little bit more signal, which is pretty cool. The mix control allows you to mix between what you're recording and what you're hearing in playback if you're multi-tracking. The phone volume here, the headphones, and we have a line out volume here, which is just called output. The reason I went for this one over the smaller model of the same thing with the one mic input is the smaller version had RCA outputs instead of these particular outputs here. But if I do ever hook them up to my KRK monitors, I'll just be using these outputs right here. Nice and simple. I don't have to go buy new cables or downgrading to RCA. On the back we also have a MIDI in and out as well. So if you're a MIDI user, get some use out of that. I'm not a MIDI user, but that's just one of those features of getting the larger one of these two units that came with MIDI. That's where you hook up this cable right here. We also have an on and off switch right here as well. So you just turn the unit on and off at the back, and it also has a phantom power switch here. So if you're using a condenser mic, which I'll be using, I'll basically just leave that on the entire time, and it will power the actual microphone. So that's really, really cool. This unit doesn't actually come with a power supply. It's powered via this particular USB cable, which is awesome. That's another reason why I wanted it. It also has an optional power function down here as well. On the bottom of the unit, we also have some rubber feet, and if we check it out, yep, it's really, really well balanced. It doesn't move or clunk around, it just sort of stays there. So I like it. It's nice and small, and it has all the features that I need to do the simple stuff that I'm going to work with. Let's see now how plug and play this unit is with my Mac. I've got the latest operating system on there. It's 10.12.6 as of this particular time of shooting this video. So let's just plug it in and hope for the best. I haven't done this yet, so hopefully it just works. That'll be awesome. So in goes the USB. Plug it into any of the ports. And now this is a USB 2.0 device. It doesn't need to be a 3.0 because it doesn't require that much speed when you're only doing 2 tracks at a time. So I haven't got any notifications yet, so that's good. Might mean that it just works. The lights on the front are on, representing that it's on. I can see the USB light, and the 48 volt one is also on, which is phantom power. So this is a video I was just working on before. Alright, so this is a project that I was just working on in Final Cut. This doesn't actually require any voiceover, but it's what's open. So let's open a window here and record a voiceover. Now, it's picking up the built-in microphone. Choose the Steinberg, there it is. You can see it already. And let's select that. So if I get up close to this microphone, you can see that the level
Alright, how to set up your audio device. 12 minutes. Jesus Christ.
Hello everyone, I'm Brian with NVIDIA and PC Audio Labs, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you an overview of how to set up your audio interface in PreSonus Studio One. Now, let's just dive in. We're going to be talking about how to set up your audio interface in Studio One. When I start page, and it gives me multiple options for creating new songs, looking at my recent files, my artist profile, newsfeed demos and tutorials, and etc. Most importantly, down here I see the option for setup, and I see a little icon that showcases my audio interface. If I click on that, I'll be presented with the options dialog box and the audio setup tab.
Oh, this must be it then. Let's see.
In this dialog box, I will see pull down for audio device. If I click on that, I'm going to see all of the audio interfaces that I have installed on my computer. Now here I can just simply click to select the audio interface that I would like to use with Studio One. Once I've done that, as long as my audio interface is set up and drivers installed and etc., I'm good to move on to the next part of this process, which will be setting up my audio inputs and outputs. However, I may want to open the control panel for my audio interface. And if I do that, I'll see the control panel for my audio interface, and in this case,
Let me see something. This isn't working.
I've got universal control. Now, universal control, or the control panel for your audio interface, is where you can make changes to some of the important factors for recording, such as your sample rate, block source, block size, and other settings. To move on to the next part of this process, which will be
Okay, I think it's working.
Studio One. Now, the sample rate has to do with how many times per of audio that comes into my audio interface recorded by Studio.
Let's unplug the monitor. I think it's slowing my computer
It
down.
can go all the way up to 192 kilohertz, my Studio 190. And your results may vary just depending. The block size is another very important factor when we're talking about recording digital audio. The block CD quality and some audio interfaces can. Rate has to do where you can make changes to some of the important inputs and outputs. However, I may want to open the control panel for as my audio interface is set up and drivers installed and etc. I'm good to move on to the next part of this process that I have installed on my computer. Now here I can just simply click to select the audio interface that I would like to use with Studio One. Once I've done that, as long as my audio interface is set up and drivers installed and etc., I'm good to move on to the next part of this process, which will be on my audio inputs and outputs. However, I may want to open the control panel for my audio interface. If I do that, I'll see the control panel by Studio One. So a sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz is CD quality, and some audio interfaces can go higher than that and can go all the way up to 192 kilohertz. My Studio 192 can do that, and your results may vary just depending on the quality of audio you may want to record. The block size is another very important factor. For live monitoring situations, such as recording your voice, recording a guitar, anything that you need to play, record through a microphone, and then come back to your headphones very quickly. There are different options in Studio One for being able to make use of very low latency and zero latency latency settings, and so you may want to play around with this a little bit depending on your audio interface. A good rule of thumb is to achieve the lowest possible block size that you can get when you're in the process of recording, and then when you go back into the process of mixing your audio, you can usually bring your block size up. And the reason for that is that a lower block size means that your computer, your audio workstation, your audio interface are all going to have to work harder in order to turn that audio signal back around from analog to digital, digital to analog. So you just want to keep that in mind. Play around with your settings. Your mileage may vary, and if you need help with that, again, just give us a call at Obedia and we can help you to set it up. Once you've set these options for your audio interface in Studio One, you can now jump back in and take a look at the rest of your settings to ensure that now you have your device block size and sample rate set properly. Take a look at your input and output latencies, which will tell you how much latency you may be incurring while recording or playing back audio. Now, we haven't yet set up our audio inputs and outputs for our audio interface in Studio One. We're going to step up and do that next, and I'll show that to you in just a moment. Now, in order to begin setting up the audio inputs and outputs in Studio One, I need to create a new song. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Create New Song, and I'm just going to kind of disregard the initial setup of the song right now. I don't need to do any special settings because I just need to set up my audio inputs and outputs. I'll hit OK on the Create New Song dialog box, and now in my new song that I've just created, I'm going to go ahead and open up the settings for this song. And when I open the settings, I'll have the option to start setting up my audio inputs and outputs. So I'm going to click on Studio One and then navigate to Options. And now I'll see the audio device setup box, which I was previously looking at, but now I'm going to notice that there's a new button labeled Song Setup. I'm going to click on Song Setup. When I click on Song Setup, I'm presented with the General Settings tab for this song. This is where I can see its sample rate and other information. The meta information for the song device setup box, which I was previously looking at, but now I'm going to notice that there's a new button labeled Song Setup. I'm going to click on Song Setup. In my new song that I've just created, I'm going to go ahead and open up the settings for this song. And when I open the settings, I'll have the option to start setting up my audio inputs and outputs. So I'm going to click on Studio One and then navigate to Options. And now I'll see the audio device.
Studio One. I don't see an options button, but I see preferences. Oh, here we go.
Setup box, which I was previously looking at, but now I'm going to notice that there's a new button labeled Song Setup. I'm going to click on Song Setup. When I click on Song Setup, I'm presented with the General Settings tab for this song. This is where I can see its sample rate and other information. The meta information for the song, which is where my artist information and other information is attached to the song, and most importantly, the audio I/O or input-output setup. Now here in the audio I/O setup, I see my Studio 192 on the top left-hand corner, and then I have a routing matrix. Now the routing matrix on the
Okay, so yep, this guy's definitely using a different computer, probably a PC. Okay. Inputs. Just finished the video, 5 minutes left.
top row is going to list the hardware inputs from my audio interface. These are all of the hardware inputs that are available, and your interface is going to differ, of course. And on the left-hand column, I will see the software inputs, as these software inputs will correspond with the hardware
Okay.
inputs from my audio interface. So for instance, I have an input left and right, and an input left and an input right set up inside of Studio One. But I am going to make a few changes here, because my input left and right, while useful, I'm probably not going to be making use of a stereo input into my audio interface. But I can see that when I move the LR icons around in the routing matrix here, they move around together. That's because that's a stereo input pair, and I can move those around. Wherever I move those, they will be routed to the hardware input that is listed on the top row, and this will be the same for my next inputs as I follow down. Now again, I want to go ahead and change this setup just a little bit, because I'm not really going to use that stereo input. So I'm going to go ahead and click it and then click on remove. Now I'd also like to name my inputs a little better to match up with the inputs on my audio interface. I don't really use an input left and right. I'm going to click on the input L, double click on it, and I'm going to change its name, and I'm going to call it input 1. And that's because that's the first input on my audio interface. And then I'll jump down, I can hit tab on my keyboard and rename the next input as input 2. So now I've got my two inputs. They're named input 1 and input 2, and they are hard-coded to talk to mic input 1 and mic input 2 on my audio interface. So if those were the only inputs that I need, then I could just move on, and I could get into the process of setting up my other inputs, outputs, and recording. But I have a lot of other inputs on this audio interface. I've got 8 analog ins. So I want to go ahead and make use of these other analog inputs on my audio. So I'm going to And so in order to do that, I'm going to click on the Add Mono button, and I'll click this 6 times to add 6 new mono inputs. Now Studio One is real smart, and it's going to name my inputs accordingly, flowing down from what my previous input was named. So it was named input 2, so now I've got input 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to input number 8. And then I can see that it also auto routes my inputs to the hardware inputs for my audio interface. So input 3 is hard-coded to input number 3 on my audio interface, input 4 to 4, and etc., moving all the way down, and I can see that from the small M icons denoting mono inputs for each of those inputs from the hardware and into the software. So over one of those M icons, I can see directly to which input that software input is chained. And now everything is set up. My inputs are ready to go. I'm going to click on Apply.
Let's go to Studio One.
Now when clicking by clicking Apply, they become active, and these are active inputs for my audio interface into Studio One. So now I'd like to set up my outputs. So I'll click on the Outputs tab, and I'll be presented with a routing matrix very similar to the input routing matrix. On the top row, I have my hardware outputs for my audio interface, and on the left-hand column, I have my software outputs from Studio One as they then chain up to the hardware outputs. Now,
Very interesting. That I have no idea what this guy's talking about.
Main output is automatically created, and it is linked up to main out left and right on my audio interface. For most folks, that's just fine. That may be all that you need in order to get started. Those little LR icons show me that the left-right stereo output that's been created is chained up to main out left and right from Studio One running out to my audio interface to my Studio 192. But I would like to make use of the headphones. I have 2 headphone outputs on my Studio 192, and you may have separate headphone outputs or other outputs on your audio interface. If that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and click Add Stereo, click it twice. Now I'm going to rename these newly created outputs. I'm going to name this Headphone 1 and name my next one Headphone 2. And now this gives me 2 headphone outputs, and I need to choose where these route to because these are just going to jump to the next available outputs, but I want these connected to my headphones. So I'm going to take my mouse, I'm going to click just under phones 1 left and right, and this moves those icons, and then I'll do the same for phones 2. So now my headphones are hard-coded to talk to those headphone outputs on my audio interface. I'll click apply and they become active. I can see that because they're no longer grayed out. There's one last important thing to take a look at, and that is the QMix. When I click on the checkboxes next to QMix for any of my second, third, and etc. audio outputs that I create in Studio One, I can now send separate audio outputs from software channels inside of Studio One out into my hardware. And this is very useful for, in this case, the headphones, where I could send separate mixes to each of those headphones and move down, and I can click on OK in order to passes, mixing, and etc. In Studio One. You can just go ahead and click yes here, and that'll make this the default input to do this again. And if you're going to pretty much set up and create inside of Studio One, and this is great because
What in the Lord's name?
Hey everybody, how's it going? Let's talk about your home recording studio today.
now send out from this dialog box. But before I do that, I'll go ahead and apply and do one last thing, and that's take a look at the Make Default button. Now, Make Default is useful because when I click on it, Studio One is going to ask me if I would like to make this the default for my future songs that I set up and create inside of Studio One. And this is great because this means that now I won't have to do all of this work again. So if you don't want to have to do this again, and if you're going to pretty much use the same input and output setup for most of your recording passes, mixing, and etc. In Studio One, you can just go ahead and click yes here, and that'll make this the default input and output setup in Studio One.
Okay,
great time saver, and when you do that, you won't have to do any of this setup ever again. And there you have it, everyone. That is how you can set up your audio inputs and outputs and your audio